Hey, you guys, welcome back to another episode of Becoming Secure. This is your host, Emily, dating and relationship coach, specializing in all things attachment. And today's episode is inspired by a conversation I had with a client in her one-on-one session yesterday, which, by the way, if you are interested in doing one-on-one work with me, Attachment Alchemy is currently accepting new clients. So this is my signature one-on-one program. You can find more details in the show notes as well as the application link. And I'll probably tell you a bit more about that as the episode continues. So, what we were talking about is how she's been feeling a lot of rejection and pain in her friendships recently. So, a lot of the work that we do will impact not just your romantic relationships, but you'll start to see how your attachment system really impacts all of your relationships, including even your work relationships. So, if you feel like your friendships are often not as reciprocal as you would like, this episode is really for you. And what that often looks like is I feel like I pursue my friends really well. I feel like I'm checking in on them. I feel like I'm thinking about them. I'm maybe anticipating what they might need. I am really looking out for them. And then when I need something or when I'm struggling, I don't get people checking in as much, or I don't see the same sort of effort reciprocated. And so, this is exactly what this client was talking about in our session yesterday. I have also felt this a lot in past friendships, and it's something that I've had to work through too. And so, I want to walk you guys through why this phenomenon happens and give you a different way to see this. So, the first thing is that we are always projecting from our own point of view, from our own belief systems, from the ways that we were programmed to operate in relationships. And especially for certain attachment styles. Now, I see this a lot for fearful avoidance, but for insecure attachment styles across the board, you may find that you relate to some of these tendencies. So I'm going to speak more from the fearful avoidant perspective because that's what I have been and that's what this client is. So in this type of environment, the way that the fearful avoidant learns to adapt is their environment is often so chaotic, whether that's emotionally or physically, that we learn to take care of other people. We learn to be hyper vigilant and hyper attuned to other people because that allows us to make sure that we can then be okay. If I can scan and read and predict other people's behavior well, I can prevent a certain amount of chaos. I can feel a bit safer. If I can anticipate what mom or dad or brother or sister needs and I can show up for them, then that is going to help me kind of manage my environment, help me mitigate some of the chaos so that I can feel okay. So it becomes this indirect way of if I can meet other people's needs, then maybe I will sort of get my needs met in return. And this is not something that anyone consciously does. This is, again, that subconscious operating system. Now, I want you to compare this to someone who grows up in a more secure environment. That dynamic looks like as a child, you cry, you are upset, and your caregiver checks in on you. They attune to you, they notice you, and then they do meet your needs. There are also emotional boundaries to where if someone is upset, it's not drastically impacting you. Like I remember in my environment and then in a lot of my clients as well, I know I experienced a lot of anger from my caregivers. And so it was from one in particular. And so there was kind of this managing of like, we just don't want to upset that person because when that person is upset, they take all of us along on the emotional roller coaster. And so when that happens, there is a complete lack of emotional boundaries, and you as a kid become somewhat responsible for that adult's emotions, which is not something that you are ever supposed to have to do. It's because that person doesn't know how to manage or regulate their own emotions. And obviously, their parents probably didn't either. So it's just the whole thing of generational trauma passed down, right? So, In a secure environment, again, there are going to be emotional boundaries where that child is not then having to take care of their parents' feelings. And so in adulthood, this creates individuals who are not actually constantly scanning and checking in on everyone. They actually learned that, hey, if I need something or if I feel something, I can communicate it. If I have a need, I can communicate it and people will respond to me well. And so I don't have to constantly be doing this like guessing game, trying to read other people, trying to manage them, and then hope that my needs indirectly get met. If that is you, the second the second scenario that the fearful avoidant or just insecure attachment styles may experience, then what can happen is you carry that into adulthood where you are managing everybody's feelings and trying to meet their needs and hoping that they will meet yours in return. Again, it's subconscious. You're not trying to do this. And what happens is if that pattern doesn't work in adulthood, you'll start building resentment towards the people around you. Like, what the heck? This is the operating system that has how worked for me in childhood. Why is it not working now? Why are you not, following the rules or the social expectations that I was given? And the thing is, it's not because they don't care about you. It's not because this person doesn't want to show up for you necessarily. Sometimes there are people who just genuinely don't want to, or they can't, right? And that's just not your person, whether that's a friend or a romantic partner. Okay, so it is not about them not wanting to show up for you. It's that they have a different set of rules for relationships that are programmed into their nervous system and their attachment system. And so, if you had actually been raised in a more secure environment, you wouldn't be doing the hyper vigilant showing up for everybody else, hoping that they meet your needs. You would actually probably not be constantly scanning and showing up quite as much as you are in relationships now. Instead, you would probably be leaned back a little bit more and receptive to people's requests, receptive to people directly communicating and not feeling like you have to guess or read between the lines as much. So when you encounter people and, friends who are not kind of like matching your they don't have the same operating system as you, it can be very triggering. Again, because it's confusing. It's like, why are they operating differently? And it can bring up a lot of rejection and a lot of pain and a lot of hurt. But it also presents you with an opportunity to begin to shift your programming. Meaning, and this is something that I had to do in my early 20s, and it was so scary when I started doing it the first time because it requires a lot of vulnerability to you get to start asking people directly to show up for you. You get to start communicating what you need. You get to start attuning to yourself as much as you're attuning to other people. Because in your hyper attunement to other people, you're actually kind of ignoring what you really need and feel. And so I want you to start taking all of that energy and awareness that you're putting into other people and give it back to you. And then begin to communicate directly to other people what you want or what you need or when you feel hurt without blaming them or without making them responsible for what you're feeling. So I remember when I first started doing this in friendships, it was really scary. It felt very vulnerable. And a lot of that goes back to if I had maybe communicated directly in my family, sometimes maybe it would have worked. But there were times when I had a lot of pain and rejection that happened because I would try to get what I needed. And then I might be, I have one pretty traumatic memory where I remember being like mocked for trying to ask for something. So, and not that that was something that was super like common throughout my upbringing, but I have a few specific memories that were really, really impactful for me. And so, whatever your experiences were, when you feel a lot of vulnerability about being direct in what you need, it's because it's flashing you back to experiences from when you were very young, where either like bad things or uncomfortable things happened when you communicated directly, or it could even be stuff that's before, like pre-verbal experiences. It could also be if you watched a sibling try to ask for something and saw how they were perceived. There could be so many different things. So it's these like social conditions that were kind of normalized in your family and the ways that you interpreted them in your child brain. So that's what makes it feel so vulnerable when you start to do this. And what you will find when you start to communicate with people directly is you'll get a few different responses. You will realize the people who actually can't show up for you, whether it seems like they just don't want to or they don't have the capacity to be the kind of friend or partner that you need. That is one option, and you will have to let go of some relationships, but you will actually be better for it. And so the temptation there might be to kind of like make their inability to show up for you mean that you're doing something wrong by asking for what you need. And that's not true. It might feel true, but it's not true. Another thing that will happen is you will actually realize that people, when given the opportunity, will show up for you. This is making me emotional. They will show up for you so much better than you could have imagined. Um, I remember I moved a few times while living in Nashville and had some crazy experiences back and forth from between different states. And I remember asking some friends to help me move at one point, and this was maybe a couple years after I had like started my healing journey. And I just remember how much they showed up for me in ways that like I wouldn't even have thought to ask for some of the things that they specifically did for me. I asked for their help with moving and maybe communicated a few things that I needed and then saw that like they actually went above and beyond what I had even asked for. And so you will see how when people are given the opportunity to show up for you, they want to and they will. And you'll see that like the love that you get to experience from people is actually so much more meaningful and significant than what you thought previous, where you maybe like expected, oh, like it only means they love me if they're hyper tuning to me and if I have to ask, then they don't really want to do it and they don't really care about how I feel. And that's so not true. It's just that people aren't mind readers. And the only people who really like are or are almost mind readers are those of us with hyper vigilant tendencies. And that's a survival strategy. So it's not even that like people are showing up for you in that hyper tuned way because they just love you so, so much. It's mostly because of their trauma responses. And so people who, are more secure aren't going to be doing that hyper monitoring in the same way, right? But they have so much love to give when you give them the opportunity to. So you're going to see that people show up for you so much bigger and better than you could have predicted. And asking people for what you need, sharing the hard things that are coming up for you, practicing that vulnerability. I want you to think of it as like little doors that you're opening to your heart and allowing more love to come in. And it doesn't mean that when you ask people for help or support, that they're always going to show up for you. Sometimes people just don't have the capacity. Sometimes there are going to be people that you ask and they're just not able to give you what you need. And there absolutely can be pain when that happens. But as you begin to do this more and more, you'll start to realize that it's not personal when people can't show up for you and that it'll start to kind of heal that wound as you get more and more positive responses and you can just appreciate what people can give to you without it feeling so high stakes when they can't show up for you or when they say no to what you need. So this is a bit about what I wanted to tell you guys about today. I think that's all the thoughts that I have, just kind of freestyling, riffing on this one. So I just want to encourage you to practice a bit of vulnerability. Find small ways that feel a little bit triggering, but not wildly triggering. Find that like edge for growth of this feels a little scary, but I can still do it rather than the like, this is so overwhelming and I'm going to end up like spiraling or shutting down and like hiding under my blankets or going into just like so much avoidance or whatever it may be. Find the small thing that's manageable but a little bit challenging and begin there. And then you'll look back a year from now and you'll see how you continue to do that over time and how you're so different and so much further ahead than you thought you were. So, all right, that is what I have for you guys today on this topic. And once again, if you are wanting to do one-on-one work with me, Attachment Alchemy is open. This is my signature one-on-one program for successful women who are either maybe you're recently out of a breakup and you want to do some healing work to become more secure in yourself, to learn how to actually date in a healthier and more secure way, and to attract someone who is healthier, or you're just single and you're mingling and you are ready to, again, develop a more secure attachment style, learn how to spot red flags, how to vet for emotional availability, how to attract someone who is healthy, and also how to communicate what you need and what you feel without pushing your partner away, without coming across as too needy, how to move through conflict in ways that actually create more intimacy and closeness in your relationship rather than it being something that is always creating tension or always feels scary. Instead, it can be something that feels pretty easy and connecting. So, if you are wanting to become more secure and attract your person, then you can apply via the link in the show notes. You can also DM me on Instagram at Emily A. Deeney if you have any questions. And yeah, all right, that's all I have. Wishing you guys lots of luck and love on your journey towards becoming more secure. Bye.